It was a moment of pivotal clarity, and the tuition fee for this little lesson almost cost me my life. And when literally the smoke cleared, that's when I realized that we're all born with this cancerous little demon that lives inside of us, whose sole mission is our self-destruction. While his nemesis is what we call the sixth sense, whose sole purpose is to warn us when that little demon shows up. Now, they're both pretty easy to ignore because there really isn't any tangible or scientific explanation for either one. I never really paid attention to them before that night, just as sure as I never will ignore either one of them again. At 22, I was a hotshot young poker player ruling this adult world of backroom poker games where the really old guys, you know, men in their 30s and 40s, they all feared me and revered me. I mean, hell, I was the kid. One night I was in a fairly high stakes game in this dingy little card room that was attached to a dingier little next door bar, where the players would sometimes walk over and get a drink break while the drunken patrons in there sometimes blundered into the card game, which is exactly what happened that night. The drunk wanders in, sees the game in progress, and decides he wants to sit down and play with us in one of the two empty chairs, because he was oblivious to the fact that there were chips on the table in front of those seats because the players who owned them were next door trying to get plastered on that two-bit watered-down whiskey. Well, the card room manager tried to smooth everything out, and he says, look, there's no list. You're first up. You can have the next seat. But that wasn't going to work. Now, the drunk went right straight to DEFCON 1. He was sure that we were conspiring to screw him out of playing in our game. And he vowed to get even with us, and then he stormed out the door. And instantly, there was this overpowering voice that only I could hear screaming in my ear, get out of here, and I mean right now. But just as present in the other ear was this raspy little whisper saying, no, stay here. I want to see what's going to happen. It's about a half hour later when that shotgun blast came through the front door, and it was heading straight at me. I just sat there. Prior to then, Danny, he'd never been anything more than a sucker with chips in a poker game. Somebody whose money was going to swell up my bankroll and my malignant ego. See, Danny was sitting straight across from me. When that blast came through the door, his eyes went vacant, and with a soft moan, he fell face first, bloodied and very dead, onto that green felt table. Danny was a big guy, and his broad back had taken up that entire load of double-aught buckshot. That drunken little son of a bitch got even. In his own little twisted mind, he figured he got even with us. And in the poker game of life, Danny drew dead. But in his biggest loss ever was one of my biggest wins. Because never since or ever again will I ignore either of those two voices.